Hello, and welcome back to our Learn Masters on the topic of exponential growth. I'm Silvija Seres, and my guest today is Jennifer Vessels, and we are just starting our lecture number 4. Welcome back, Jennifer.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, very good to have you here, still and again. And so this is our final chat on the topic of exponential growth, and the way we usually structure this is that this is a workshop. So it's a live date in front of people trying to figure out, with your help, how to apply the topic that you talked about on a particular case. And in our case, it's Lørn, always Lørn. So perfect. I have a company. It does corporate education in digital formats and through digital channels. And I have a problem, Jennifer. When I look for investors, so companies are beginning to buy from us. Companies have recognized the problem of bringing all of their employees to the same place when it comes to understanding of their strategy and the necessary technology to implement the strategy. So onboarding, reboarding, cross-boarding of employees is beginning to be a recognized problem. And there is also an increasing willingness to spend some money on doing this. Budgets are being repositioned from sending people to big conferences or sending people to individual, very expensive courses to programs that include all employees and that are tailor-made and very fresh. So far, so good, right? But when I talk to my investors, they tell me this is not exponential growth. You're just a media company, you're a consulting company, and you're selling project by project. All good and well, but this is not an exponentially growing company. Then I tell to my investors or potential investors, no, wait. Because when a company buys from us, they're going to be buying two things. One is a certain sum for the production of a number of cases, of a number of workshops, of conferences, but also they pay per employee access to our digital platform for distribution of all of this content. So there is a certain level of subscription-based revenue here. Isn't that good enough? And then they tell me, well, you still have to convince me that the company will come back with these licenses year after year after year. And what's the compelling and necessary reason you're providing them to come back with this? That's the one requirement they have for exponential growth. They want to see this annual recurring revenue. The other requirement they have is they want to see a platform which can serve not just 5 corporate customers with, 1,000 employees each. They want to see a platform that can serve as many as Airbnb can serve, go international, etc. So I don't know, I'm coming to you, help me think this through, and how do I reposition my little company from selling consulting services into selling managed services with annual recurring revenue and the platform distribution? Where do I start?
Yeah, and it's a great dilemma, because as I listen to you describe it, I would honestly have to agree with the investors, because currently today, if you're selling the product, i.e., we will come into your company and we will understand the needs and we will build this program and we will roll it out. That is perpetual, if you will, or product sales, and it is selling based upon what it takes to create it, i.e., the number of hours, the number of technology bits. You're selling a product, which is not really aligned from the market of exponential growth, because it means you've got to sell that product to multiple people multiple times, and there is no guarantee that they will come back. Kind of the same problem
So I want to add to that, because basically the basic problem here and they can come back, and we can try to convince them. So you don't do a knowledge program or a competency program once and then you're done. The way that the world changes in an exponential manner, what you need to do is keep doing this year after year after year.
Exactly.
But even so, it takes, it's a function of hours you have to spend creating that competency building program. So the big question, I guess, is how do we make sure that the competency program we build for one customer, first of all, scales very, very much related to the number of people taking it internally, but maybe also has some external effects, other people listening. Or what do you think? How can we move from this point of, being paid by the hour?
Yeah. So the real answer is to understand what is the unsolved problem that you're solving better than any other solution out there that multiple companies have a need for. What is that number one thing that makes Lørn the right choice for 100 companies in Norway or 1,000 companies around the Nordic that no one else can do? If I'm just making this up, but let's say if you talk to your customers and you talk to people you want to have as customers, and you identify through that exploration that the thing they are not getting from any other education, LinkedIn learning, conferences, everything, the thing they're not getting is the real human, practical conversations with thought leaders. They get a lot of theory, they get a lot of speakers, but they don't get conversations that apply to their business. If that's the thing they're missing, then you ask them, for you to have a regular, ongoing, every year, X amount of access to conversations with the latest thought leaders, what would you be willing to pay for that? That's part of that exploration. So if they want to hear from 3 of the latest thought leaders in conversation with Silvija every year and they're willing to pay money, that's what you begin selling. You begin selling real conversations as a service.
I think we're getting close to the core of the missing item. So, storytelling on your own cases is the missing part of corporate education, as I see it. I think that there are really good courses on the theory of many topics.
Yes.
Actually, what we're doing now is more similar to what LinkedIn Learning does, or Videocation, or Coursera, or Glassdoor, or Udemy, or Udacity, and they create video first, or sound first, or text first with a quiz, and you can go and learn a topic. But very often, it is not a conversation, and so you have to watch a video, be fully concentrated. So the first innovation that I think is ours is that we are using podcast as an educational format because we believe that it reaches people in these in-between moments, which is the only time left available for learning. You're really busy in your job, you're really busy in your private life, or you should focus on your private life when you're having your private life. But while you're driving to work, while you're exercising, while you're painting your house, while you're sitting in the airplane, you can listen and learn. So it's a format innovation, but it's also innovation in the sense that I believe that it's easier to remember if you hear a good story than if you have to listen to a very formal lecture. So it's a podcast for the time in between. It's a conversation and a story, so that it would be an easy pill to swallow. It is very, very comfortable. It's very convenient.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in this combination of new formats, the third innovation is your own stories.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that people learn more from their own stories
Mm-hmm.
told with the right understanding of all this new technology and trends than they would learn from a story about GE or Microsoft or Tesla or Airbnb or Amazon. So it's creating this space for learning within your own tailored content, put in a new format, and then getting everybody on board. That's a really important part of it as well, because what you see in most companies is that there would be people like you and me that are, almost pathologically optimistic and curious and keen to learn. And then the 70, 90% that says, I'm more than 35 years old. I have more than enough to do in my job. And can you just let me get on with my job? I can't be bothered, honestly. And so how do you get all of them on board? Because this has to be a joint journey. You can't go it alone. So something about that is the idea.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the uniqueness being the storytelling and making it real for people. So the question that I would suggest, you go out possibly and talk to your customers about is what are the kinds of stories that would really make a difference in their organization? What are the areas in which they have experts internally that could contribute to those stories? Because I'm just making this up, let's say you talk to people in Storebrand and they say, I have Jan over here who is absolutely great at telling stories about when he worked at Google and how analytics worked and how that applies to the insurance business. Great. Let's sign Jan up to do one of these. Let's get him motivated. Let's get him psychologically committed. He's going to find more Jans in the company, and you build a momentum. So start small and build that process around something that you believe is a unique problem, i.e., how to get people involved in their own learning, how to learn from stories, and how to build within a company their own bucket of stories and learning.
And that's part of what we do. And that part goes really well. The difficult bit is actually getting all employees on a platform. And platform. So the reason why we are talking now with a special focus on exponential growth is how do we go from delivering a great service, which is very popular, into making it into this new digital platform. And what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I guess the thing I would question is it a challenge of how to roll it out, i.e. platform, or is it a challenge of how to build a business model that gets you to that exponential growth in recurring revenue? Now, if the problem is more on how do we get the exponential growth in revenue, I would suggest you look basically at what is going to drive people, i.e. your decision makers in companies. What is going to drive them to commit to annual revenue rates at a higher level? It may be having more people use the platform. That may be one way of getting a higher revenue amount, or it may not be. A company may say, we have 25 people that are our high potential upcoming leaders. We want them using the platform 50% of the time. We don't care about the other 75%.
This is where I have actually the biggest kind of challenger sales moment with the companies, because if we all continue doing that, and this is what companies do today, they have their high potentials sent to good programs, national or international, and it's the same high potentials who already go to Coursera and LinkedIn in addition to this. The problem is that you can't build your company's future on the top 10% of your employees alone. You can't have an HR strategy that is going to try to get rid of the remaining 90% and keep replacing them every third year with these new high potentials that will also become outdated after 3 years. So, we have to move from having ambitions on behalf of our top new heads, as we like to call them, to ambitions on behalf of all. And I think that the trick here, strategically, Jennifer, will be to convince companies that the cost per head for all is so affordable that it's almost immoral not to do it. So how much is each employee worth to you? Okay, so you're willing to send that guy to INSEAD for a cost of 800,000 Norwegian kroner, or maybe they'll go to Solstrand for half of that sum. But are you willing to spend 500 krona per employee, every employee, to make sure that they are motivated and capable one more year? I think that is an HR discussion that is overdue by at least 10 years.
I agree, and sometimes it's simply a question of how do you go about it? Because if you're finding you have to convince the customer to do that 50 a year per person, if you're having to convince them, that may not be the path to take. Whereas if you shifted, go where the puck is going, go where the customer's mind is. If you shifted to say, instead of spending 800,000 or 400,000 for these 50 people, why don't you spend X amount to cover these 50 people? And by the way, anybody else that happens to want to do this, they can follow along, but let's not worry about them. Your head is on these 50. Let's set the price based on the 50. You can spend 100,000 for each of those 50. Everybody else is free, no problem. And you still get to your end result.
I think that there are two important things here. And if it's 50 and the rest is free, that's fine as well. But I think it has to be every year. Because people also think, well, we did it 2 years ago and we're happy. And then you have to ask them, well, haven't you innovated in the last 2 years? Hasn't the world changed? Don't we need to? And we can come up with a new focus area every year. So I think it's this understanding that it's really urgent and it's continual. And then the other thing that I think is really important is that people already say, we already do this. We have our competency program in place and we are spending tons of money. But the problem with that is that they're not measuring the effect. So how many of your employees have actually taken those courses? And what do you do with the 50% that hasn't touched them? And, have you put your own content in there, or are you just buying content that has been created by a business school 3 years ago? And
Two things. One is on the first challenge that you mentioned, how to get past selling it for this year. We'll try it this year and then we'll let you know if we want it next year. A way of approaching that is in your pricing model. That you've got these 50 people or 10 people, you want it for a year, it's 100,000 per person for a year. Or if you sign up for a 3-year program, we're actually going to give it to you for less. It will be 75,000 this year, and then we will charge you 10,000 for the same thing repeated next year, 10,000 for the same thing repeated the next year. And then we'll offer you other things that can sit on top of that. That's the Amazon Prime model. Find what they really are willing to pay money for. They want to pay money for these 10 or 50 people. Make that easy. And then tie in something that keeps them connected to you. And I'm sure you have the data and the analytics to recognize what are the programs people are interfacing with, which ones are being used the most. Those are the programs you offer at a higher rate, new versions in year 2. Even higher rate, new versions year 3. So you leverage the platform that you've built by locking people in through basically a pricing model based on what's going to be most important to them. That would be the first part that I would start with.
I think you're into something extremely important, because I think it very much starts with the pricing model. We are educating the market, and they need to understand this continual nature of this type of a product through a pricing model. And then also, and the other thing that you mentioned that's really important is being able to use analytics. Have data that proves the value of your product. I think that's one thing that's really missing in many of these other programs. So I think LinkedIn Learning is now coming with the capacity to define a learning path by a boss for his employee. That's the sort of thing we can do in our platform as well. So, make it, and it will be the learning data that will be the really relevant report to the company that's using this, because they will then see that, okay, so 75% of all of my employees did this part of the program. Well, this part seems to be quite unpopular. Let's understand why.
Exactly. And you can also leverage that data to reward the learner. So you send stars out. Yanni, you've just completed your 3rd program. Give some feedback to your manager. Give some feedback to the next 3 people that are coming in the program. You begin to build the community. That's the Airbnb model. Get the host and the renter involved. Get them bringing other people in. That builds that momentum and gives you a much stronger ability to go back to your decision maker to say, look, Jan has already gotten this amount of stars, and he's brought in 5 more people, and he's recommending your customer actually start using this. So you build the momentum from there. That's the exponential element. It's not Lørn doing it. You get the customer to do it.
Very cool. So we haven't really talked a lot about platform, but the platform side of this is basically having access to all the content in a structured way, having maybe third-party content, having access to student data, and being able to start creating new services on top of that data.
And I think that's absolutely a key element here. The important thing there is to first recognize what is going to be most important to your customer. What's going to drive that user adoption, i.e. the people to actually take the programs? What would they be willing and able to come back into and do? Get them making comments, get them providing the testimonials, and then you go back to the end customer and build from that viewpoint. But make it available for what's most important. And then you can restructure your business model such that at level 1, you get to see these things. At level 2, you pay more and you get to see these things based on the data of what is most important to people and what are they engaging with the most and having the greatest success with. Reward success. That goes very, very far. We all like to get gold stars, and we all like to get likes and building momentum.
Very cool. Jennifer, I think we'll stop there. So from my perspective, what I would really like listeners to do is try to think about their own company, maybe their own division in a bigger company, in the similar way that we discussed Lørn now. So start with, what's your market failure that you're trying to fix? What's the problem that you want to rant about that you really, really think is worth solving? And then try to think about the unique data, the unique technologies, the unique people, the unique market access, the unique partnerships that you might have to be solving this. And then try to create different experiments, as Jennifer was talking about them. You will learn from each of them. Remember, this takes time. This also takes quite a bit of confidence and humility, but it's the only way forward. And Jennifer, do you want to give people some sort of a final advice on how to grapple with exponential growth?
Yeah, the best place to start is with your purpose. What are you trying to solve? What do you believe you can really leave as a legacy in this world? Be willing to do that exploration and experiment and try things. And definitely take action with colleagues. The collaboration part is so critical. How can you bring others that have similar passion around you to help support you out of complacency, to push you up when you have that failure, and to look at things differently? And through that, you will actually gain experience. And as you gain more experience, you can go back and look at and say, based on the data that we have of what people are doing, what the user rates are, where we're succeeding, how can we bring more in, and then how do we set our business model, our pricing, and our long-term strategy around customer value. Because ultimately, the technology and the platform that we have, that is that fertile soil. What's really going to create the flowers and the blossoms in the garden is based on the value that you're going to bring forward into the market. It takes time, it takes persistence, and it takes a lot of passion to stick with it, do what it takes, but good things will come and flowers will grow. As
Great.
will Lørn.
As we'll learn. Exactly. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us here in this master series of 4 mini lectures about exponential growth.
Super. Thank you for having me.